On March 4, 1943, a 542-foot cargo ship carrying 306 souls simply ceased to exist, and the U.S. Navy still has no explanation. The USS Cyclops was not a warship. She was a carrier, a bulk carrier designed to haul manganese ore and coal across the Atlantic. Built in 1910, she'd spent 3 decades in service, moving cargo that other vessels wouldn't touch. By 1943, she was one of the Navy's workhorses, and on March 4th, she departed Barbados with a full load of manganese destined for Baltimore. Captain Johan Worsen had commanded larger vessels. He knew the route. He knew his crew, 306 men total, including 16 officers. The ocean in early March sits between seasons. Storms are possible but not guaranteed. Worsen had a decision to make: take the direct route through the Sargasso Sea or swing wider, safer, slower. He chose direct. Faster meant less coal burned. Less coal meant better numbers for the Navy's logistics officers. What Worsen didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that the Cyclops was in worse shape than the Navy's inspectors had recorded. The ship's structural integrity had degraded. Her boilers were aging. The cargo of manganese ore, dense and heavy, shifted with every swell. No one at the docks in Barbados had flagged these risks. The paperwork said she was fit to sail. March 4, 1943, the Cyclops left port at dawn. The crew settled into routine watch rotations, engine room checks, the hum of a 542-foot vessel in motion. The ocean was calm, too calm, some would later say, but calm seas don't sink ships. What does is what happens below the waterline, unseen and unheard until it's too late. For 8 days, nothing happened. Radio operators sent routine position reports. The Cyclops was on schedule, she was making good time. The manganese ore sat in the hold, pressing down with the weight of 800 tons. No one was tracking the microfractures forming in the hull. No one was measuring the strain. March 12th, the Cyclops sent her last radio message. Position 400 miles northeast of Barbados. The weather was deteriorating, squalls moving in from the southwest, but squalls are routine in the Atlantic. Captains navigate through them constantly. Worsen had faced worse. He held course. He kept the speed steady. And then silence, not a distress call, not a mayday, not even a final position report. The Cyclops simply stopped transmitting. At that moment on shore, no one noticed. There was a war on. Messages went missing all the time. Ships were sunk by U-boats weekly. One delayed radio check-in meant nothing. 6 hours later, still unnoticed. 12 hours later, still routine. The Navy didn't expect the Cyclops in Baltimore until March 15th, 3 days away. 3 days of sailing without a soul on shore, knowing that 306 men were no longer aboard a ship that was no longer floating. On March 15th, the Cyclops failed to arrive. The Navy sent inquiries. Had she been delayed, rerouted? By March 16th, concern shifted to alarm. A 542-foot vessel carrying a Navy crew doesn't vanish without explanation, except it had. Somewhere in 400 miles of open Atlantic, the Cyclops had broken apart, sunk, and taken every man with her to the bottom. The search began immediately. The Navy deployed destroyers, cruisers, and patrol aircraft. They swept the Sargasso Sea, the area where Worsen's last position placed him. They found nothing. No wreckage, no oil slick, no lifeboats, no bodies. It was as if the ship had been erased from the ocean entirely. Theories emerged fast. A U-boat attack, possible, but no German submarine reported a kill. A sudden structural failure. The ship's inspections said no, though those inspections were conducted by men who didn't know what they weren't looking for. A rogue wave, the Bermuda Triangle. These explanations grew wilder as the Navy's investigation grew quieter. The truth, when Navy investigators finally pieced it together, was more mundane but no less fatal. The Cyclops' hull had fractured under the weight of her cargo. The manganese ore, shifting in rough seas, had stressed joints that were already compromised by age and inadequate maintenance. The ship broke in half. She sank fast, so fast that no one had time to send a distress signal. But here's what haunts the record. The Navy's own negligence made that fracture fatal. The Cyclops had been flagged for maintenance before departure. Those flags were ignored. The cargo was loaded beyond what careful calculations would have allowed. Cost-cutting meant fewer inspectors, less scrutiny, faster turnarounds. Worsen chose the faster route to save fuel. Every decision seemed rational at the time. The loss of the USS Cyclops remains the single largest loss of life in U.S. naval history during peacetime. 306 men, gone in minutes without a witness. No one survived to tell what happened in those final moments. No one heard the metal scream as the hull split. No one saw the ocean rush in. The Navy learned from the Cyclops. Inspections tightened. Cargo loading limits were enforced. Ships were retired earlier rather than pushed beyond their limits. But 306 men paid the price for lessons that should have been learned from the vessels that sank before her. They died not in combat, not in battle, but in the bureaucratic margin between good enough and actually safe. The Cyclops herself was never found. Her wreckage rests somewhere on the Atlantic floor, 3,000 meters down, beyond the reach of divers or submersibles. She sits in darkness with the remains of men who made decisions under pressure, with information they didn't have, in a system that valued speed over caution. That's the real mystery of the USS Cyclops, not what sank her, structural failure under load, but why a navy that knew better let her sail anyway, why cost-cutting outweighed caution, why 306 men had to die before anyone took it seriously. Subscribe for the next maritime disaster that nobody got right the first time.